Well, update on the building. I got all the tin on. Took me about 2 days off and on, working on it a little bit and coming back later and working on it. Been really hot and muggy these last few days, so I've had to take my time with it. It's all up there though. Took 7 pieces on the back and 7 on the front. Here's a view from the underside. It's the first time I've ever done anything like this. Put down tin, so it was interesting. I don't know if I did it exactly right or the most efficient way, but it's up there. It doesn't leak. I've tested it, so I put all my screws on the peaks. I watched different videos on whether you put it in the valley of the tin or on the peak. I decided to put it on the peak because I felt like, the water is going to naturally flow down into the valley of the tin, so if my screw holes are on the peaks, then maybe it minimizes the chance of it leaking around that grommet and down in the screw hole and into the building. So I don't know. That's how I did it. You can see how much overhang is here. I told in the video before, I told you it was about 1.5 inches, 2 inches out of square. You can see it, visualize it here. I think I had about 8 inches of overhang here. 8 or 9, I can't remember exactly. Then over here, it doesn't overhang as much. I think it was about 5 inches there. So it may be like 3 inches out of square. 2 or 3 inches. But yeah, overall I'm pretty happy with that. Now I gotta just work on cutting up more siding for it. I'm using expansion foam. I had a couple cans of that great stuff, expansion foam, laying around. So I've been using that to, I don't know if you can see or not focusing very well. We'll go around back here, I'll show you. Using the expansion foam in here to fill in those cracks. Seems to be doing a pretty good job. Still some small air right there, a little bit of light coming through. I'll have to go back over it a little bit, and I want to try to fill in most of the big cracks and holes, keep big bugs from getting in. Then I'm also going to go back and put tar all along the bottom here, just coat this in tar, because that'll discourage ants and little critters from climbing up the post and eating into the wood. And then periodically, maybe once a year, I'll get bug bombs, those little cans of bombs to kill bugs, put it up under here, maybe one inside, and bomb it. I might do that later this summer after everything's all done, since I'm dealing with wood that, a lot of wood that hasn't been treated. This is the first piece of tin I laid on, and I learned that you got to get your first piece right. You got to get that square, and because everything else works off of that piece. The whole rest of the roof references your first piece. So I made sure it had enough overhang This thing keeps kind of going out of focus here. Made sure it had enough overhang to cover my siding. What I did to make sure that my first piece of tin, because I referenced everything off of this first piece of tin, so to make sure it wasn't going in cattywampus left or right, you know, I wasn't laying it in at an angle. I was laying it in square as possible to the purlins. I ran a string from this rafter to the rafter on the far end to give myself a reference line. And I laid this first piece of tin on here and made sure that this side of the piece was flush with that line and this side of the piece was flush with it as well. So it just gave me a reference point. I just laid all the pieces of tin out and went along with the ladder and screwed down as far as I could reach out. And these are 8-foot pieces. The ones in the front are 12-foot pieces. And that was kind of poor planning on my part. I should have made the building small enough where 2 8-foot pieces would have been sufficient, but it's a little bit over 16 feet long. It's not exactly 16 feet, so, and I wanted to have overhang, you know, here and in the front. So I had to buy 12-foot pieces for the front. Anyway, after I put on this first 8-foot piece and got it screwed down as far as I could reach, then I came over and slid up. I put a ladder here and slid my body up through the space in the purlins and reached back and screwed in up here on this side, on the top side of it. I just kind of did the same all the way down, and then I laid my 12-foot piece on top of it. So there's a wide on this seam here. There's a lot of coverage on that seam. I mean, like 2 or 3 feet. So I guess that's good. I mean, it should keep it. I mean, that's pretty waterproof, I would think. That does bug me a little bit that it hangs out. It hangs farther over there than it does here. Just a example of inexperience. And working with round poles, I think, was a big part of it too. It's hard to get those square. You don't have a square edge to pull a string off of, so it makes it a little bit funky. But I'll be working on the siding next. They used the expansion. There were some powder post beetles inside of that pine. They make big old holes in that wood. So I've used that expansion foam to fill in the holes. Then I'll just sand it off, that little bubble off, or cut it off with a utility knife or something. I mean, it's not gonna be bug tight, but I mean airtight. But I'm gonna try to do my best to seal in as many cracks and holes as I can. Keep rain and wind out. Overall, I'm pretty pleased with it. It's been raining here the last few days, and you can see the floor stayed pretty dry. There's a few little spots where it blows in from the side, gets the edge of it wet, but it's protecting everything back here, so that's the idea.